Jeepers the Little Frog. Written and illustrated by Marjorie Cooper. Jimmy was helping his mother make a little pool in the middle of the garden. He carefully lifted a spadeful of earth out of the hole and dumped it on the pile. A big pink worm wriggled out of the soil. Jimmy picked up the worm and said wistfully, "I wish I had a real pet, Mom. I wish I had a little dog." "Perhaps when you are older, Jimmy, and can feed and care for a dog all by yourself," she replied. "Now I think the hole is just about right." They lifted a small tub and placed it in the hole, pushing the earth close around the edges. Then Mother piled some rocks in the tub. Jimmy turned on the garden hose faucet and filled the tub with water. "Now," said Mother, "let's plant some flowers all around the edge and it will look like a real little pool." Jimmy patted the earth around a pansy plant. "I wish I could have a goldfish," he said. "I bet there are fish in the pond beyond the meadow." If Jimmy could only have seen what was in the pond right that minute! Darting about in the cool green water were dozens of tiny tadpoles. They looked like little fish with tails and no legs. Every day they grew a little bit larger. Legs began to grow and the long tails started to shrink. Finally there came a day when they had no tails left. They could jump and hop as well as swim. They were little frogs. One frog, who was bigger and bolder than the others, gave an extra big leap and landed kerplop right out of the pond onto the grassy bank. He was so surprised and pleased that he took another big hop, then another and another. In no time at all he had left the pond far behind. At last he stopped to rest. My, he was tired. Perhaps he should leap back into the pond, but he was lost. The pond was nowhere in sight. Suddenly he heard something coming. He hid away down under a leaf. A big duck came waddling along, followed by 5 fluffy yellow ducklings. They did not even see the frightened little frog. They were on their way to swim in the pond. Little Frog was alone again. He stared all around with his pop eyes. Everything was still. He crawled out from under the leaf and started on. Hoppity hop, kerplunkety plunk, over the grass and stones. Oh, if only he could find his nice green pond and leap into the water. Listen, what was that? He sat motionless on a rock, trying to look like part of it. Something big and furry was padding along toward him. It was a fat raccoon with his little black mask over his eyes. He was on his way to the pond, too, where he liked to dip his food in the water before eating it. The bright button eyes looked this way and that. A little frog would make a mighty tasty morsel for his supper. Poor little frog, he sat quiet as quiet, and his green color changed to gray to match the rock on which he sat. If only he could leap into his pond and hide at the bottom. But the raccoon didn't see him, for the little frog looked like a stone on the rock. So he ambled along. It was getting dark, and oh, how the little frog wished he could find his home. He was tired and hungry and scared. At last he hopped off the rock and went on, hoppity hop, kerplunkety plunk, a big hop over a low stone wall, and hoppity hop, kerplunkety plunk, kerplash! He was in water. Where was he? He swam around and liked it because he was in a little pond. It wasn't big like his first home, but it was lovely and wet. And there were nice rocks to sit on, and flies and bugs fluttering about just waiting to be eaten. He gave a big satisfied sigh and settled himself for the night. The next morning, when Jimmy went to the garden with his mother, his eyes grew round with surprise. Sitting on the rock that jutted from the pool, basking and blinking in the sun, sat the little frog. "Oh, Mother, look, a frog!" cried Jimmy. "Oh, jeepers, jeepers, I've got a pet, and one who can feed and take care of himself." As Jimmy hurried toward him, the little frog croaked, "Rook, rook, rook," and jumped, kersplash, into the pool. He swam around and then crawled back onto the rock and stared at Jimmy. His little throat moved in and out as he breathed. He seemed to smile and looked contented. "Oh," cried Jimmy, "what shall I call him? What shall I name him?" "Call him Jeepers," said Mother. And that is how Jeepers, the little frog, came to live in Jimmy's pool. The end.